Not yet. Do you understand? Yeah.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Merci d'être venus. Petite surprise, the rest of this panel will be in English. Sorry about that. First of all, thank you so much for coming along today. Congratulations on finding us. We're sort of hidden at the back there. It's my pleasure to be here today at the invitation of VAIMOO, one of Europe's leading providers of shared e-bike services. And of course, we're talking about e-bikes today, but not only e-bikes, we're talking about sort of the nexus with public transport as well. You know, what are the synergies that can be made between e-bike sharing services and sort of general public transit services as well. Just by way of introduction, my name's Cameron Remington. I lead work on the European Shared Mobility Index. Here we go. That's published quarterly by Fluctuo. If you're not familiar with Fluctuo's work, we're the leading aggregator of shared mobility data and shared mobility analytics. We're just located in the startup village behind you there. I guess one of the things that we've tried to do with the latest report of the European Shared Mobility Index is to go through and see some of the key trends from 2021. What were some of the headline issues? For me, I think one of the biggest ones was the return of bike sharing. You know, we've got a lot of exhibitors out there with e-scooters. There's always a lot of press around e-scooters. But I think in 2021, we saw the real return of bike sharing services. Just to give you one statistic, of all of the shared mobility trips that we at Fluctuo monitored for the month of December 2021, half of those were on shared bikes. So, you know, we've got a lot of press around e-scooters, but I think bike sharing remains very much the backbone of a lot of cities' shared mobility offering. I think the other real lesson from me for 2021 was the change in perspective, I think, from public authorities. You know, I think for a lot of city officials, micro-mobility and bike sharing services have sort of been an issue that needs to be regulated or managed. And I think we've seen sort of a 180-degree turnaround of that perspective, and now cities are really looking at bike sharing in particular as a way of solving some of their urban congestion issues. So this is basically what we're going to be looking at today, sort of that nexus between bike sharing and broader public transport services. I guess I'm really just amazed at the kind of level of expertise we've got on the stage at the moment. Lots of different perspectives to attack this issue from. So we've got on the end there Giancarlo Oranges. He's the general manager at VAIMOO, so effectively our host today. Thanks for having us along. We've got Cornelius Kiermask, head of shared mobility at Deutsche Bahn Connect. So obviously Deutsche Bahn being one of the most formidable public transport operators in Europe, so we'll be really interested to see what you have to say today. And we've got Michael Bartnick, he's project manager at Yelby, so Berlin's go-to multi-mobility platform, so thanks for being here as well. I guess just by way of introduction, maybe we can go through just quickly to explain all of your different business models. As I said, we've got lots of different perspectives on this issue of bike sharing and public transit. So maybe you could just sort of draw out some of the differences and benefits of each of your particular business models. Would you like to start, Giancarlo?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Giancarlo Oranges, General Manager at VAIMOO. In VAIMOO, we provide integrated solution for sharing operator, e-bike sharing operator scheme. Our offer includes bicycles, electronics, connectivity, and platform and user application. Our business model is quite simple. We work hardly at the side of our clients, our partners that are the main European sharing operator, to provide the best solution fitting both user needs and operator management needs. And for doing that, we have also a direct experience as operator in Rotterdam when we directly operate a scheme, and if you want, we learn by our own experience which are the real important needs for our operator, and we develop this in our offer to completely fulfill their needs. And I think that the next steps in our proposition, it's already a reality, will be to be side by side with public transport operator, because I see a very big synergy opportunities in that field.
And what about Deutsche Bahn Connect?
Yeah, like we run already since 20 years. Our bike sharing product is called Call a Bike in the German market in over 80 cities with 13,000 bikes, a rough 1,000 like electric bikes there. And we run it, on the one hand, we do it as part of integration of after the train, like as a last mile solution or the first mile solution. And then we run it also for the city of Hamburg, city of Stuttgart and the whole region. Around 40 cities is the region of Stuttgart are part of our bike sharing system. And we run it for the city and getting also paid from the city. And also we do the bike sharing fleet of Airbus, like in the factory plant in Hamburg and for BMW in Munich. So we have like the different use cases for the city on the one hand, then for also our train customers after the train trip, and then also for companies. And yeah, like 20 years experience and are now like also going the way into more electric bikes, what we see, but we will come to that later.
So sort of two similar but very different operational experiences there. Yelby is very different, isn't it, Michael?
Wow, 20 years. I remember when you wanted to rent a caller bike or finish a rent, you had to call a mailbox and say which corner, which street, and for opening you got an SMS with a code. Wow. Well, Yelby is not that old. We are 3 years old. We are a platform, so like a marketplace, or let's describe it like a tapas bar. You find all the mobility option you need in this moment. Public transport for the long run, or maybe a bicycle, a cargo bike, car sharing, scooter sharing, stuff like that. And as a platform, we have different dimensions. We have the booking app where you can find all these mobility options. You don't jump to another app, you book in the Yelby app. We have our mobility hubs, our Yelby stations, where you find them physically close to a station, close to a shopping center, close to your flat or close to your employer. Yeah, that's Yelby. And our mission is to give the Berliners, we are from Berlin, we are operated by the Berlin's public transport company, BVG. It's like RATP de Berlin. And our mission is to bring all these mobility options to more and more and more Berliners, that they don't need an own car.
And so as part of that, you've already integrated some free-floating e-bike services?
Yeah. We had a call of participation 3 years ago and asked the whole market who wants to be part of Yelby. And the deal is deeply integration in the app and bring your maybe bicycles to our stations. All the operators in Berlin asked to cooperate. And now, step by step, we integrate them.
So I guess one thing we should specify is we're really thinking now about e-bikes. You know, a lot of the statistics that we see across Europe for bike share systems do tend to be from some of those kind of more conventional sort of pedal municipal schemes, actually, including here in Paris. When it comes to e-bikes, is this something that is inevitably going to take over the market? You know, is there always going to be a role for pedal bikes or mechanical bikes, or are we going to end up with a 100% electric offering when it comes to bike share? And if we are, what does that mean for batteries, for operational requirements, for infrastructure requirements? Where do you see this going? Do you want to tackle that one, Cornelius?
Yeah, sure. So currently, when we look at the bike sharing tenders that we see in the German market, it's up to 100% pedal bikes, normal bikes. Maybe a few tenders, they have like 10% of electric bikes. So one reason is because with electric bikes, they are much more expensive to run them. So a city, you know, if they want to finance a bike sharing system, they need more money to put in. So currently, we don't see it in the German market. Apart from Stuttgart, the one that we run, because Stuttgart is, everyone that knows Stuttgart is quite hilly. The topography is like, you don't want to bike there. when it's not an electric one. So there we see it already because there's a demand, because otherwise nobody will use the normal bikes. But on the maybe next 5 years or even 10 years, I see it going up to 50, even to 80 or 100%. Because we also see it in the numbers that the utilization rate is much higher with electric bikes. And also they use it more often. So the acceptance from a customer point of view is there.
Yeah, I think that does seem to be quite universal, that these are very popular sort of e-bikes, but they're also more expensive. Giancarlo, do you think we'll get to a 100% penetration for e-bikes?
I think if I try to think with the head of the user, the final user, I'm quite sure that the utilization will go to the 100% electric bikes in the next year. There is no reason for what would not happen, because I think even a balancing price with comfort will be always preferred by the users. Of course, this makes more cost for operator in terms of recharging, in terms of battery, in terms of battery swap, and in terms of cost of the vehicle upfront itself. But I think that we have to work hardly to find solution to this kind of problem. Maybe not in terms of upfront price, of course, it's difficult because battery has a cost, but in terms of recharging structure, distributing a recharging structure all over the cities without a swapping necessity for a user, and also with some maybe more efficiency in battery range and battery utilization. But I think anyway, it's a trend that will not get back through electric bike.
Is this something that you're seeing? You mentioned the Yelby hubs around Berlin. Is this something that is on the agenda? This more and more increasing use of electric vehicles that do need to be charged. How is that going to play into some of these sort of multimodal hubs that Yelby is involved with?
Yeah, there are different point of views. The customer's point of view is, we see in our usage, there are more users using electric vehicles. We have a very, very cheap bike sharing system. It's €1 per half an hour. It's a modal split of approximately 10% of the bookings in the app, or 10% of the rides in at the stations, very constantly. But since we have the scooters, now we have approximately 40 or 50% of modal split of the scooters. So it's not a question of price, it's a question of comfort. And we see in Berlin, now we have, I think, three bike sharing operators, one with the mechanical bikes, and two that launched electric bikes. Okay, we started to work with the scooter providers to provide our Yelby station with different charging infrastructure. We tried this and this and this, maybe a charging station with a cable, or with solar panels, or a charging box for swappable batteries, but there's no one-fits-all solution. Every sharing provider has its own charging concept, and there it's hard to find the right way. And I think we still need some years, some months, until the market of the sharing providers is organized, or maybe the city will ask the providers to go on one solution.
If we're right, and that there is a growing trend towards, maybe not 100%, but dominant e-bike fleets around Europe, how do you think that's going to play out in terms of those different charging models? Will there be one charging model that really dominates? Is that a role for public authorities to kind of set standards? If we fast forward maybe 2-3 years, what does charging an e-bike fleet look like in Europe?
Well, I think when we look in Stuttgart, we have a station-based model, and we charge it also once it's plugged in, then you directly charge it. But then you have, when you grow, increase the number of stations, it's a lot of work, to then put the cable in and so on. So I see it goes into the direction of a swapping battery long term, because this is easier to manage. However, when you have then, for example, you have only like 2 stations at a company, you know, like getting from A to B, where, from the main station to the company, and you have only like 2 stations, then from an operational point of view, it's easier to have it like, no, not a swappable battery ones. So at least the bikes should have like both options, either station-based charging or swap with a swapping battery. But long term is swapping battery, what I see.
Do you agree with that, Jean-Carlos?
Yes, I agree, I do, but what I think that we need to have a scheme that are based both on free-floating and docking station. This is for extending the utilization of bikes in order to have always more suitable service for the user. But on the other side, I think that manufacturers and the system should move through a standardization of battery and the recharging system. In my mind, if you want, in I don't know how many years, but batteries will be like the petrol now. So you don't mind where you go to take your battery and where you go to charge your battery, because there will be such a standardization. And I think this is a process that will be intramodal. The standardization will affect also other vehicles to have a complete electrification of the micromobility.
I think maybe there's an assumption underlining our whole conversation today, which is that sort of this growing electro-micro-mobility actively supports mass transit in sort of European cities. There is a little bit of debate, though, about maybe a shared micromobility trip or a shared bike trip actually replaces a passenger journey on mass transit or on public transport. How do you respond to that? Do you think the bike sharing and public transport are kind of in competition? Are they complementary? How do you respond to the criticism that maybe one is replacing the other?
Well, I see it's a complementary. That's also why we as Deutsche Bahn, the train company in Germany, is running car and bike sharing, both products. And also because we come from the idea that if you have options, first last mile options, then people get rid of their own car and use alternatives and then use more public transportation and more trains. So clearly complementary.
Do you both agree?
In my opinion, the public transport operator will take profit by integration with last and first mile mobility. They know better than each other what their customer, their clients really needs. They know very well the traffic flow of passengers from where they live, where they go, and most of the time the train or underground is just a part of the trip. And so I think it's more than a complement. I think that bike sharing integration will increase the utilization of public transport. And when I say e-bikes, it's not just only because I make bikes, but because I actually think that at the moment, bikes is the more inclusive vehicles in that direction, for age, gender, and whatever.
And when it comes to multi-modality, do you see everything being complementary or sometimes competing with each other?
I think we just have one competitor, and this is the private-owned car. For us, as Yabi, it's not important if you use public transport, bike sharing, or scooter sharing, because you're our client. And the most important is that you have a decision not buying an own car that needs 12.5 square meters, so much space in a growing city like Berlin, Paris, or other cities. And yeah, that's why a lot of, and that's an interesting learning we had with the LB. A lot of partners asked us, like housing companies, shopping centers, hospitals, bring us these sharing mobility modes to our maybe suburbs or new build areas that we don't have to build those private car parking spaces.
I think that's probably a common point that everyone can agree with to finish the session. Sorry, it has been very brief, but we are all out of time. Please join me in thanking our panelists today. Merci.